The void between the stars was broken by a light that shouldn't have been there. It was a white pulse, cutting through the darkness with mathematical precision, so intense that it made the sensors of the human fleet tremble for a moment. In the early hours, analysts said it was a greeting. The politicians said it was a miracle. But the soldiers remained silent. On the bridge of the Aegis command ship, Captain Helena Drax watched the echo of the holographic pulse with a steady gaze. She was a veteran of 3 interstellar campaigns, someone who knew well the difference between a peace sign and a range check. "Yes, Captain," replied the tactical officer. "Thaler sector, outer border. No human colonies recorded. The sign is perfect, repeated at 10-second intervals." "Too perfect," murmured Helena. The Galactic Council ordered the fleet to move forward. 3 heavy cruisers, 7 escort frigates, and dozens of fighters were mobilized to the sector. It was, officially, a diplomatic contact mission, but all the shields were loaded and the torpedo bays were full. As Aegis crossed the warp drive, a unified transmission was sent on all known frequencies. To the intelligence that sent the signal, "We came in peace. We are ready to dialogue." On the other side, no response. Just the same white, rhythmic, patient pulse, like an alien heart waiting for its prey to approach. As they exited the fold, the Thaler sector revealed itself as a silent field of cool stars and blue nebulae. No habitable planet, no station, no sign of life, except a structure in the center. A colossal formation suspended in the void, symmetrical, with lights pulsing in rhythm with the signal. Helena stood up slowly. "This is not a satellite, not even a base," added the engineer. "Seems a fleet." The lights suddenly expanded. Several silhouettes appeared around the structure, ships, dozens of them, slowly materializing as predators coming out of the shadows. No transponder, no recognizable language, only the white pulse, now amplified. "Captain," the communications officer said, "they're not responding to the greeting protocols." Helena fixed her eyes on the alien formation. She already knew. They didn't come to negotiate. The imaginary camera pulls back, showing the 2 fleets facing each other in the void, in absolute silence, like 2 armies breathing before the first bullet. The Alpha Contact fleet was advancing in flawless formation, cutting through the void like a silent blade. Each ship had a precise purpose: heavy cruisers ahead, protective frigates on the sides, and swarms of fighters orbiting like restless bees around a metal hive. At the center of the formation was the Aegis, the flagship. Gigantuan, forged in the wars of the Lyra frontier, it bore the scars of old conflicts, but its strategic core was impeccable. Long-range communication systems, state-of-the-art sensors, and a crew trained for the impossible. In the command room, Captain Helena Drax walked slowly, watching each console. The tension was palpable. There were none of the typical signs of a diplomatic mission. No welcoming atmosphere, no ambassador smiling. Just soldiers, engineers, and strategists, all aware that they were at the edge of the human frontier, faced with something they did not understand. Admiral Orlan Veth, commander of the fleet, appeared in the central hologram, transmitted from his auxiliary command ship. Her face hardened, her gaze steady. "Captain Drax, position. Aegis stabilized at point Alpha 3. All units are in a defensive position. No signal response." "What about the enemy formation?" Helena enlarged the viewfinder. The alien silhouettes floated in absolute silence, like sharp shadows in space. Their ships were asymmetrical, with angular and curved shapes at the same time, as if engineering followed unknown laws. Some had slow rotating structures. Others seemed to absorb light from the surroundings, distorting nearby stars. But the energy fields are active. They are watching us. In the lower wings, fighter pilots donned their combat suits. Engines were fired, and plasma towers lined up. The voltage before the first fire order was like pure electricity running through the entire fleet. A young pilot looked out the side window. "They are standing still, but it seems that they are waiting for us to breathe first." Another replied in a low voice, "Or they're deciding where to start." Meanwhile, in Aegis's internal labs, scientists analyzed the white pulse. It was too perfect. It had no flaws, interferences, or natural signatures. Each sequence was identical, as if it were generated by a single artificial nucleus. "This is not a language," said Dr. Leon, the fleet's linguist. "It's a scorer. They're not trying to talk. They are announcing their presence." At the strategic center, Helena and the senior officers drew up contingency plans. There was no time for politics. The orders were clear. Avoid conflict, but do not lower the shields. The entire fleet began to operate in radio silence, transmitting only basic signals. It was a tense dance. Every human movement was calculated not to look like provocation, but also so as not to look like weakness. Admiral Veth broke the silence. "Captain, get ready. I know that kind of stillness. This is not diplomacy. It's hunting." Helena took a deep breath. The panels showed the alien ships beginning to move in sync, forming an arc around the human fleet. Slowly. "They're surrounding us," said the tactician. "No," replied Helena, staring at the hologram. "They're closing in." Outside, in the dark space, the two forces drew their boards, and the war began to form in silence. The silence between the two fleets was almost physical. On the human side, every radar, every sensor, and every nerve fiber was on high alert. On the alien side, there were no sounds, lights, or gestures that suggested any clear intent. Just that white pulse, repeated with inhuman precision, cutting through space like a mechanical heartbeat. On the bridge of the Aegis, Captain Helena Drax watched the signal repeating on the holographic panel. 3 seconds of emission, 10 seconds of silence, 3 seconds of emission. "They're not responding to any known protocols," the communications officer said in frustration. "They're not attacking either," Dr. Leon retorted, his eyes fixed on the spectrogram. It can be a form of invitation." Helena arched her eyebrow. "Invitation or trap? In war, the two usually look the same." Admiral Veth appeared again in the spotlight, his expression hardened. "The Galactic Council orders us to issue a universal peace sign. Open frequency, Alpha Code." Helena felt the weight of the decision. Alpha Code was an ancient transmission created for first contact situations, a combination of mathematical, linguistic, and visual patterns designed to be recognized by any advanced civilization as an attempt at peaceful communication. "Transmit it," Helena ordered. In deep space, the human fleet has opened all channels. A beam of pulsating blue light shot out of the Aegis, expanding into soft waves. It was beautiful, almost poetic, the universal sound of human diplomacy. Everyone on the bridge held their breath. 10 seconds, 20, 40. Then, for the first time, the alien spacecraft responded. But not with words. The lights on their structures began to flicker in complex patterns. It wasn't the cold repetition of before. It was something new, fast, almost organic, as if they were analyzing the human message in real time and giving it back. A simulation. In the labs, the linguistics team was working frantically. "They're mirroring our transmissions," Leon said, typing nonstop. "They are copying the format, but not the content." "Like a parrot?" asked a technician. "Like a predator mimicking a call." On the bridge, Helena watched the alien formation change. Once motionless, now the ships began to reposition themselves in concentric circles, like a net slowly closing. "They're dancing with us," murmured the tactician. "They're measuring us." Admiral Veth interrupted the reports. "Captain, hold your ground. Do not open fire. Any hasty reaction could trigger an all-out war." "Sir," replied Helena, "with all due respect, all-out war may already be their plan." Outside, the white pulse synchronized perfectly with the human transmission, as if the two fleets were connected by an invisible wire. Era, harmonious, beautiful, misleading. And then, without warning, all the alien lights went out at the same time. For a second, the Thaler sector plunged into absolute darkness. At that moment, Helena knew. They are not responding to our peace sign. They are preparing the ground. The silence that followed was more frightening than any shot. The darkness that followed the alien response was unlike any ordinary blackout. It wasn't the absence of light. It was as if something had swallowed the glow of the surrounding stars. The sensors of the human fleet were blinded for a few endless seconds, and the entire space seemed to hold its breath. On the Aegis bridge, The silent alarms cascaded on. "Captain, we lost power reading." "What do you mean, everything?" "Sensors, radar, infrared, side communication. Everything is being absorbed. It's as if we were inside a gravitational shadow." Admiral Veth appeared in the spotlight, his face illuminated by the ship's own emergency red light. "We are blind, sir. All detection systems are suffocated. Hold your position. No shots. We will take back control before we act." Helena nodded, but inside she knew. Any army that could erase the eyes of the human fleet in seconds. He was not there to negotiate. Outside, in the black void, something began to slowly emerge from the darkness. At first, it was just an outline, a colossal, flowing silhouette that moved noiselessly. Then, Aegis's emergency lights began to pick up reflections on the alien structures. It was not just any fleet. It was a living, almost organic formation, composed of dozens of ships that seemed to form a single coordinated body. "Captain," Dr. Leon said, her voice almost whispered. "They are synchronized, like an intelligent swarm. There is no apparent hierarchy, only unity." The tactician expanded the three-dimensional projection with limited data. The alien ships slowly positioned themselves around the human fleet, forming a perfect ring. It was not a tactic of friendly approach. It was a silent siege. In the hangars of the human fleet, pilots raced to their fighters. Engines were started, red lights flashed through the corridors, and generals activated total lockdown protocols. No ship would leave, and no signal would be emitted until the command was given. "They're closing the perimeter," said the tactician. "Less than 100,000 kilometers and reducing rapidly." Helena narrowed her eyes. "They are approaching without sudden acceleration. They want us to stay still." At that moment, the alien lights turned back on, not in white, but in a deep red, pulsing in perfect sync like a giant heartbeat. The entire fleet vibrated to the same rhythm, as if something invisible was controlling each ship simultaneously. On the bridge, the silence was broken by the operator's tense voice. "Captain, detecting change in the local gravitational field. They're doubling the space around us." "Explain." "They're creating a bubble, isolating us from the rest of the galaxy." The captain slowly turned to the spotlight. Admiral Veth had already understood. "They're not coming. They've already arrived." Outside, the alien ring closed completely. In the center, the human fleet looked like surrounded prey, surrounded by predators that didn't need to roar. Helena took a deep breath, her fingers sliding to the command panel. "Crew, high alert. All defense systems are ready." They didn't come to talk. The first wave of distortion pierced through the human shields like a silent wind. The war was a whisper away from starting. The first attack did not start with gunfire. It started with the space deforming. The instant the alien formation completed the encirclement, the gravitational field around the human fleet contracted abruptly, as if an invisible hand had clenched its fist over them. Aegis's sensors exploded in alarms, and all the screens displayed violent distortions. "Gravity collapses. They are pulling space," shouted the engineer. "Real-time vector compensation," replied Helena. Outside, the alien ships released beams of energy invisible to the naked eye, but which left luminous trails the moment they touched human shields, like golden lines cracking glass. The outer frigates shook violently, the shields screamed, and in less than 30 seconds, 3 of them were pierced. The first to fall was Darrow, hit by a concentrated pulse that pierced through her armor like a spear of light. The ship broke in half in absolute silence, the sound of the explosion only being heard inside the fleet's radios. Hundreds of lives disappeared in a brief flash. On the bridge of the Aegis, Helena kept her face impassive, but inside she felt the impact. "All units disperse. Arc lock formation. Flanks for cover." The fighters were released from the hangars in glowing swarms, like sparks escaping from an anvil. Within seconds, the void filled with beamlines crossing each other at high speed, lasers, torpedoes, and thruster trails tracing chaotic patterns around the alien encirclement. But the enemies did not respond like a conventional fleet. They had no fixed formation, no frigates, and no clear capitals. Their ships moved like parts of a single organism, deflecting in perfect synchrony, reconfiguring themselves in real time. When a human fighter fired, Three ships positioned themselves at opposite angles, creating gravitational cones that deflected the projectiles in the air, as if bending physics itself in their favor. "They're predicting our shots," said Dr. Leon, watching the patterns in shock. "They're responding before we shoot." The stargazing sky has become a silent battlefield, lit only by the blasts of plasma and the golden glows of alien weapons. A squadron of human fighters attempted a concentrated attack on the right side of the enemy formation and disappeared in a coordinated explosion. The aliens created a sphere of energy at the instant of impact, returning the attack against the fighters themselves. The Aegis trembled as a pulse grazed the hull, distorting the metal as if it were liquid. "Side impact. Shielding 72%. Beta compartment damaged." Helena gritted her teeth. "Reinforce the local warp fields. They want to crush us before they even destroy us." Admiral Veth broadcast on open channel. "All units, hold position and return fire in Delta coordinated mode. We can't run away. We have to resist here." The main towers of the Aegis slowly rotated, aligning themselves. With a metallic roar, the heavy plasma cannons were fired in sequence. Bluish rays cut through the void, hitting one of the alien ships head-on, and for the first time, something flashed on their side. The enemy ship crumbled into golden fragments, dissolving into space like sand being blown away. A murmur of hope ran across the bridge. But then, the other ships began to reconfigure themselves around the wreckage, absorbing it. And within seconds, the same ship resurfaced, intact. Helena closed her hand over the panel. They are not just many, they are one. Outside, the siege tightened. The first attack had begun, and the human fleet was already outnumbered. The structures of the human fleet trembled under the siege. Reports of damage popped up through communication channels, fragmented shields, destroyed frigates, and fighter jets being swept away by coordinated fire. The battle seemed lost before it even began. But on the Aegis bridge, Captain Helena Drax didn't blink. His eyes ran through the tactical projections, analyzing patterns, looking for flaws. Anything. "They rebuild themselves, as if they shared a single nucleus," said the tactician. "They are not a fleet. They are an organism, and every organism has a control point." Dr. Leon expanded the gravitational frequency data. In the midst of the visual chaos, there was something constant, a gravitational pulse at the center of the enemy formation, firm, regular, and almost imperceptible. "I think I found it. There is a resonance core. It's small, but all the ships seem synchronized to it. If we destroy it, they lose coordination," added Helena. "Or rather, they go blind." She opened a top priority channel for the entire fleet. "This is Captain Drax. We will change the course of this battle. They think we are isolated prey, but they have forgotten who survived the Loira Wars. All units, be careful. Start the dispersion maneuver in an inverted arc. Let's create space and open a gap for a surgical attack." In the hangars, the fighter pilots received the order with a mixture of tension and adrenaline. "Here, Delta Squadron, receiving. Let's make history." The human fleet began to split in multiple directions, forcing the aliens to stretch their formation to maintain the siege. This broke, even if only for a moment, the perfection of the enemy ring. The unit began to be overloaded, responding to multiple vectors at the same time. At the center of the formation, the Aegis prepared its concentrated warp cannon, a rarely used weapon capable of distorting space into a single point and crushing everything within it. "Coordinates blocked," the tactician announced. Meanwhile, fighter squadrons advanced like angry swarms, cutting through space in unpredictable turns. They didn't try to destroy, only to distract. They passed close to the alien ships, forcing them into mass defensive maneuvers. It was like attacking a giant beast with hundreds of small cuts to make it move. But the aliens got the glimpse. The pulsating red lights accelerated, and the entire formation began to spin slowly, like a whirlwind that wanted to drag the human fleet back to the center. "They're trying to realign us," the engineer shouted. "Don't back down." Admiral Veth opened the way for Helena. "You have a chance, Drax. If I make a mistake, I won't make a mistake. 10 seconds. Aegis concentrated energy. The space around her folded, creating a dark blue vortex that seemed to swallow light itself. The alien craft detected the payload and moved desperately forward to disrupt it. Human fighters sacrificed themselves to block them, exploding in front of the energy corridors. 1 second. Helena pressed the command. Fire! The firing of the warp gun was silent, but the entire space seemed to shudder. A concentrated beam hit the central gravitational core. For a moment, nothing happened. So, the pulse stopped. All the alien ships hesitated at the same time. Their formations faltered and the movements lost synchronization. It was like cutting the wires of a puppeteer. "They're disorganized," shouted the tactician. Helena straightened up. "All units, concentrated fire now." The remaining frigates opened coordinated fire. The cruisers launched warp torpedoes. The fighters infiltrated through the gaps in the enemy formation. For the first time, the tide of battle turned. But Helena knew that was not the end. It was only the first real coup. The alien core had been hit, and for a brief instant, the impossible happened. The perfect swarm faltered. Previously synchronized enemy ships began to move erratically, colliding with each other in disorderly micro-adjustments. The red lights lost their rhythm, like a heart that forgot how to beat. On the Aegis bridge, Helena saw the opportunity with military coldness. "This is the moment." Admiral Veth appeared in the spotlight, his voice steady. "Drax, you opened the wound. Now, finish." Helena nodded. "All units, total offensive mode, Delta and Blade formations, without hesitation." The human fleet advanced like a living wall, crossing the void with engines at full power. Plasma cannons fired at a brutal rate, warp torpedoes traced impossible turns, and fighters dove through the enemy formation like vengeful swarms. The aliens tried to fight back. Their patterns slowly began to re-establish themselves, like neurons reconnecting. But the break had been costly. Human frigates concentrated fire at specific points, blowing up segments of the formation and creating permanent gaps. Each explosion was a golden flash, followed by debris that dissolved into nothingness. "Captain," cried the engineer, "the core is still active, but unstable. If he re-establishes the pulse, we will be back to square one." Helena looked at the tactical map. The core was surrounded by an energetic barrier that was slowly rebuilding itself, like flesh healing in real time. It was clear they had little time. In the hangars, Delta Squadron was preparing for one last push. They were the most skilled pilots, now with ammunition almost exhausted. "This is Leader Delta," said the pilot in a firm voice over the open channel. "If we go, there is no turning back." Helena replied, "Then make it count." While the fleet maintained the siege, the Delta fighters dived in close formation towards the core. Alien spacecraft, even disorganized, launched floods of gravitational beams, trying to intercept them. One by one, the fighters went down, not by incompetence, but by choice. Each pilot opened a gap for the next to pass. Inside the Aegis, the officers watched the route in reverent silence. Each luminous dot that disappeared on the radar represented a name, a story. Leader Delta broke through the last barrier. "I'm on target. Starting manual overload." The image shook. The fighter went into rotation, the reactor overloading as it launched directly into the core. Helena closed her eyes for a second. "Heroes don't ask permission," she murmured. Impact. A white flash filled the entire sector. The core collapsed, releasing a reverse gravitational wave that destroyed the connections between the alien craft. Each one began to fragment, dissolving like golden dust thrown into the cosmic wind. On the bridge, the crew watched in silence as the enemy encirclement unraveled before them. The human fleet was in tatters, but alive. "Captain," said the tactician emotionally, They are falling." Helena kept her gaze fixed on the screen, steady, but her eyes sparkled. "Then let's make sure that this story don't repeat yourself." The last bursts were fired. The void, which had previously pulsed red, was now silent and starry again. But before everyone could breathe a sigh of relief, the sensors picked up something. Fragments of the core escaping in multiple directions, like seeds thrown into the wind. Helena realized that wasn't over, just begun. The silence after the battle was almost deafening. In space, where minutes before lights, explosions, and beams cut through the void, now only golden fragments remained floating slowly, like cosmic ashes from an enemy that seemed invincible. The human fleet hung wounded, broken hulls, unstable thrusters, smoke-filled corridors, and exhausted crews. Of the dozens of ships that arrived in the Thalor sector, less than half still had full maneuverability. And yet, they won. On the bridge of the Aegis, Captain Helena Drax observed the holographic map. The enemy formation had disintegrated, but in the center of the projection now appeared hundreds of small contrails of energy, spreading out in all directions. This is no ordinary wreck. Dr. Leon, with wide eyes, added, "They are fragments of the core. They are dividing themselves." On the display, each fragment shot to a different point in the galaxy, like seeds thrown by a dying creature that knew exactly what it was doing. It was not an escape. It was multiplication. Admiral Veth appeared in the spotlight, more serious than ever. "Drax, congratulations. You saved more lives than you realize. But this," he pointed to the tracks, "this is not victory. It's a warning." Helena replied firmly, "Then we must run faster than they." In the hangars, surviving soldiers evacuated the wounded. Pilots embraced each other in silence, and engineers worked frantically to keep the systems running. The space smelled of burnt metal and sacrifice. A transmission was sent to the entire galactic command. "This is the Alpha Contact Fleet, Thalor Sector. The enemy did not come to negotiate. To repeat, they did not come to negotiate. Central core destroyed. Fragments dispersed across multiple vectors. Prepare defenses in all border sectors." That was just the beginning. As the message echoed through the channels, Aegis aligned its jump systems. The remaining fleet was slowly forming behind her. The survivors knew they were coming home not as conquerors, but as messengers of a larger war. Helena remained on the bridge, watching the tracks fade on the map one by one. "They will get back on their feet," she murmured. Leon nodded in a grave tone. "And next time, we may not have time to prepare." The imaginary camera pulls back, showing the damaged human fleet sailing through the starry void. The golden wreckage glows softly in the distance, like embers that refuse to go out. The music grows, slow, epic, and dark. Narrative voice, grave, cinematic. In the vastness of the cosmos, not every war begins with gunfire. Some start with a sign and end with an echo. Humanity has won today, but tomorrow has already been set. If you love space war stories, suspense, and epic battles with twists and turns, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell. Each new story is a new chapter in the war between the known and what lurks in the shadows of the universe.